Cooler in the Lake. Lauren May, special to the Tribune. Chicago Tribune, October 16th, 1994. The standing joke about Chicago weather is, if you don't like it, wait 5 minutes and it will change. Of course, a short jaunt north into Lake County could produce the same results. There isn't a huge Florida versus Alaska climatic gap between the city and county, but statistics show a difference that winter commuters can't help noticing. For example, temperatures in the northern suburbs can be quite different from those in the city. Lake County should tend to be a little bit cooler than Chicago, said Roger Trimestra, meteorologist for WGN AM 720 radio. According to statistics compiled by the National Weather Service, the average July temperature at the University of Chicago on Chicago's south side is 73.7 degrees, while in Lake Villa it is 70.6 degrees. The average January temperature in Chicago is 25.4 degrees, while in Lake Villa is 20.1 degrees. These and other subtle differences in the weather between the two areas could mean commuters traveling into Chicago should pack an umbrella, or those leaving downtown for offices in the northern suburbs might want to carry a sweater. But on occasion, even greater contrasts between climates in Chicago and those in Lake and other counties in the metro area have been recognized. Last winter, there were several days when suburbanites in Lake County were shoveling substantial amounts of snow off their driveways, while on the same days, city dwellers experienced only a powdering. Meteorologists say there are reasons for the differences in climate and precipitation, however slight or significant. Trey Mestra said there are several factors that figure into what can be major variations in the weather, both in the summer and winter. Among those are topography, our location next to Lake Michigan, and the geographic location in relation to where weather systems originate. But of that cast of characters Trimester described, it's the large body of water to the east that plays the leading role in the ever-changing scenes of Chicago area weather. Lake Michigan has a tremendous effect on our weather, Trimestra said. It in itself affects the weather. It will cause the weather. The familiar cooler near the lake saying, heard mostly on television and radio weather forecasts during the spring and summer months, rings true in both Lake and Cook counties. Lake breezes, as they're called, account for the cooler temperatures in suburbs lining the western shores of Lake Michigan. Because the temperature of the lake is cooler than the temperature of the land during the warmer seasons, winds blowing inland become cooler when they combine with water temperatures before reaching the land, said Tim McGill, chief meteorologist for Chicagoland Television, CLTV. When you have a water temperature, for example, that might be in the 50s, which we saw early in the summer, and you get a wind off the lake during the afternoon, and you have breezes out of the southwest inland, you can have a difference from 85 degrees in places like Elgin, and then up in Lake County, you can be as cool as the low 60s, McGill said. There can be a tremendous range of temperatures, 20 degrees or more in some instances, depending on the conditions. McGill was quick to point out that lake breezes have the same effect on the downtown area in the city as they do on eastern portions of Lake County. But lake breezes might seem cooler in Lake County than in Chicago because, in general, temperatures are slightly cooler in the northern suburbs simply because they are farther north, McGill said. The farther north you go, you're going to be subject to cooler weather, even in the summer, McGill said. You can normally expect temperatures in Lake and McHenry counties near the Wisconsin border to be 4 or 5 degrees cooler on any given day than maybe in Will County or Kankakee County. Richard Kroneman, a meteorologist for the National Weather Service in Romeoville, said lake breezes in Lake County will be cooler than those in Cook County when there is a southeast wind, because the air will spend more time over Lake Michigan gathering cold air. Lake breezes affect mostly spring temperatures, when the lake is still quite cold from the winter and the air is warming up, Kroneman said. More proof of the climatic differences can be found in instances of extreme hot or cold conditions. Extreme cold temperatures occur more frequently in Lake County, while extreme hot temperatures occur more often in Chicago. Lake Villa had 15 days in the last 21 years when temperatures reached 20 degrees below zero or colder, while the Midway Airport in Chicago experienced only 7 such days in the same time period, according to the National Weather Service. As for record high temperatures, Chicago's Midway Airport had 15 days when temperatures reached 100 degrees or more since 1973. While the Lake Villa had hit the 100-degree mark on only 3 days. To illustrate differences among regions in the Chicago area, CLTV created Pinpoint Weather when it first went on the air last year, McGill said. The system divides Chicago and its suburbs into different zones to provide viewers with a more specific prediction for their region, rather than one generic forecast for Chicago, he said. Lake County is grouped with McHenry County, McGill said. We try to come up with forecasts that are pinpointed for those areas, McGill said. Now, there are some days where there will be very little variation, but there are other days when a lake breeze might be going on that will be able to really give a different forecast for each zone and try to be a little more accurate rather than just blend everybody together. The slight variations in temperature might not make a difference to most people, but it can be crucial for Lake County's farmers. Lake County is a little bit more rural, McGill said. It's farther north, so you're more prone to the colder air, and typically at night temperatures can be 5 or 6 degrees cooler, which can be critical when you're talking about spring and farmers trying to plant crops. You give a temperature for the city of a low of 40 degrees, and up in Lake County, it could be 33 to 34 degrees and cold enough for frost. Another factor that contributes to more Arctic weather in Lake County, according to Trimestra, is topography. As you go north, you get a little elevation, Trimestra explained. As you get just a little rise in elevation, it can make a tremendous difference in temperature and also on snowfall, because as the air encounters these little rises, it will squeeze a little bit more moisture out of it. That's why you have several ski areas just across the Wisconsin border. Trimestra's other theory about why Lake County is cooler than Chicago is a little bit more complicated. He described a climatic phenomenon of sorts in which cold fronts coming from the north and northwest during the winter tend to stall in Lake County before reaching Chicago, creating cooler temperatures in the northern suburbs. Many times, especially as we get into the change of seasons, the cold air will stall out right around the Wisconsin-Illinois border, Trimestra said, noting the reason is not known. Koneman of the Weather Service said the city also tends to be warmer than rural Lake County because of all the urban concrete and asphalt. He called it an urban warming effect. On sunny days, the pavement absorbs heat, then passes it back into the air, he said. There's a lot of blacktop, not a lot of trees, McGill concurred. You tend to have an urban warming effect, especially at night. On the flip side, vegetation in the Lake County area will use its heat energy for photosynthesis, but it will not transfer it back to the air, keeping temperatures slightly cooler than in the city, Koneman said. A similar occurrence happens with water surfaces located throughout Lake County, Koneman added. The sun's heat is absorbed by the water, especially near the Chain of Lakes area, and therefore isn't available to heat the air. This explanation has been the consensus of several forecasters at the National Weather Service, Koneman said, though they do not yet have statistics to back it up. One weather category where there is little difference between the northern suburbs and Chicago is precipitation. That's because Lake County and Chicago fall into the same climatic zone and usually receive the same storms, Koneman said. In general, the average precipitation across the Chicago area is about 33 inches a year, and it doesn't really vary significantly from one spot to another, Koneman said. Although rainfall averages are about the same throughout the Chicago area, the city tends to be cloudier than surrounding regions, said Wayne Wendeland, state climatologist with the Illinois State Water Survey in Champaign. Those clouds are not formed the natural way, however. They are created from substances found more often in the city than in the suburbs. They originate from pollution. Cloud cover over an urban area like Chicago and its immediate environs, which might include southern Lake County, tends to be greater than what is in a rural area, just because the city area has so much debris in the air, Len explained. Some of that matter, which is in the air, serves as a nucleus around which humidity can condense and at least form haze and fog, and sometimes clouds. Average snowfall, which accounts for part of the precipitation, can vary sometimes, and that has to do with proximity to Lake Michigan. That's right, the source of those pleasant summer breezes is also the culprit that dumped extra snow across several Lake County suburbs last winter, neatly avoiding the city area. Called lake effect snow, the fluffier than usual substance is actually generated by moisture accumulated above Lake Michigan. Water from the lake evaporates into the cold air. Then, if the air is cooled even more, the water vapor condenses out as snow, Koneman said. That snow is then blown out to shore, he said. Lake effect snow is more common during the early winter months when the difference between the temperatures of the air and the temperature of the lake is greatest. The colder the air and the warmer the lake, the more lake effect snow there will be, Koneman said. And lake-induced snow is almost always heaviest right on the lakeshore and decreases inland. It's a phenomenon that affects all of metropolitan Chicago, he said. In Lake County, we'll ordinarily get lake snow when the winds are from the northeast or north. There were a few significant Lake Michigan-induced snows last year that occurred across the northern portion of metropolitan Chicago, including Lake County, which produced much less snow across most of the rest of the city area, Koneman said. That was a situation where literally a big snow occurs in Lake County and it didn't occur across much of the rest of the city area. This isn't all that unusual. The reason Chicago did not see any of the white stuff is because the narrow band carrying the lake effect snow just never shifted as far south as the city, Koneman said. Similar occurrences happen in Chicago, when bands carrying lake effect snow span only 10 to 20 miles and don't reach the northern suburbs, he said. But as with precipitation, lake effect snow measured over a long period of time still is about the same in Lake County as in Chicago, Koneman said. On any given day, depending on winds off the lake, it can vary slightly as to where it will hit, he said. According to the National Weather Service's statistics compiled during the 30 years ending in 1993, Lakeville averaged 49 inches of snow a year, the University of Chicago averaged 47 inches, and Midway Airport had 43 inches. Heavy lake effect snows last winter, 60 inches, and in 1979, 86 inches, brought the suburbs average up, Koneman said. There's not a significant enough difference in these numbers, I think, to be statistically significant, Koneman said. Where there is a more noticeable difference in snowfall, based almost solely on lake effect snow, is around the southern tip of Lake Michigan, Koneman said. That's where bands have a longer stretch above the lake to accumulate snow before reaching the shore. South Bend, Indiana, has an average of 95 to 98 inches of snow a year, Koneman said. Differences in the weather also are apparent within Lake County, Trimester said. Again, Lake Michigan is responsible for the varying temperatures. In the western parts of Lake County, the weather is going to be a heck of a lot different than in the eastern parts of Lake County, because the eastern parts abut the shore, Trimester said. It wouldn't surprise me to see a 30-degree spread in temperature. Suburbs along the lake are cooler in the spring and summer months and warmer in the fall and winter months than surrounding towns, he said. So basically, no one is going to winter in Chicago and summer in Lake County because of the weather differences, but it may help explain the daily torture that local forecasters go through in trying to be accurate. In general, people are becoming more weather conscious and more weather knowledgeable, Trimester said. Weather plays such an important part in our lives. We're never going to be able to change the weather, but we can tell people what to expect and how to adapt to it so they can make the proper plans.